Okay, let's cover all the tools you're going to need to change the fork seals on the front forks of your motorcycle. So here's your front fork. Down here is your seals. Tools you're going to need are going to be somewhat similar, whether the forks are upside down or the right way up. But upside down forks can be a little bit more complicated. So let's go through all the tools. First thing you're going to need, really, is something like this. This is a paddock stand. It's a special one that fits into the head of the motorcycle, and it basically lifts the motorcycle up off the ground. You can see it takes it up by about 2 inches, 2-3 inches. You will need that extra clearance. You will need a rear paddock stand, because this paddock stand will not work unless you have a rear paddock stand. They will be flopping all over the place. It won't be stable, but it's stable once you have the rear paddock stand. Okay? And you need that because you need to get off the wheel, you need to get off the calipers, and you need to get down, pull down the forks here. So they're connected to the motorcycle here, top yoke, and the bottom yoke. And then they're connected via the axle down here. So to loosen the lock nut on the axle, you're going to need something like this, which is an impact bit or an impact socket. This one's a 28mm. It's an unusual size. Usually doesn't come in the socket sets. The next thing you're going to need is some Allen key sockets. So these are hex sockets. You're going to need those for undoing the bolts here and here, here and here, holding on the mud guard, and then holding on the brakes as well. There's going to be 2 bolts. Then, next thing you're going to need is at least some sort of a ratchet for connecting onto these sockets. Ideally, you want a breaker bar, because some of them are going to be quite tight, particularly the lock nut on the front wheel. That's probably going to be tight. Once you get the fork out, or before you take it out, you're going to need some more sockets. Maybe not this one, but you're going to need some size of a socket, a different size socket, to loosen the cap on the top of the fork. This one is quite small size, but it can be quite large. Again, it can be up to in the high 20s. It can be that size. So you need to check for your motorcycle what size. The next thing you're going to need when you're putting this all back on together, you're going to need a torque spanner. So you need to tighten all the fasteners to specification. So you're going to need this special ratchet, which will tighten them to the set scale, either in Newton meters or foot pounds, pound foot. Okay. Next thing you're going to need for disassembly or part of the assembly is something like this. Now this is not actually a tool. This is off a lampshade, but I've adapted it as a tool because it has a little, if you see here, it has threads on the inside, and the size and shape of the tool almost matches exactly the tool that you're going to need. Particularly for upside down forks, there's going to be a little rod in the center of the fork, and you need to be able to pull it up and down. To pull it up and down, you need to screw on something like this. It has to be something thin, and I kind of screw it onto the top of it, and you're able to pull this little rod up and down. Without that, the job is quite difficult, and this is a tool that's not readily available. You can buy them online. I haven't seen them, maybe I searched and I wasn't able to find them that easily, but they are available online. But as I said, this is something that I just adapted from a lampshade. Okay, next thing you're going to need is something like pliers for taking out there's a little stopper, a little metal stopper that kind of sits on top of the seals. You're going to have to be able to take that out. It's on like a little springy piece. You're going to need something like zip ties or rope to tie up the front calipers so that they're not hanging down and putting weight on the brake lines. You're going to need a flathead screwdriver, usually a medium, not a small one. Well, small one might do the job, but this is a medium sized one. Okay, you're going to need a ruler to measure the oil level inside the fork. You're going to need a fork seal driver, which is this little machine apparatus. It just basically wraps around the fork, splits in half. There's different designs, but this one comes in 2 pieces, and it's just for driving the fork seal or the oil seal, which is this one here, for driving it down into so it's seated properly. I'm going to use some impact driver. So it is a Makita impact driver. You don't really need it, but I find that these help a lot, particularly for bolts that have not been opened for a long time. They could be kind of seized with rust. Impact driver helps a lot to free those up. Next thing you're going to need is this long tool here. Let me show it to you. It's only time you'll ever use this tool is for doing the front forks, and it is a fork spring compressor. You might get away without it, but I would warn against it. There is some videos online that show DIY mechanics working on front forks without this tool, but I would warn that this is not always possible. Sometimes the springs are so rigid and so tough that you will not be able to compress them with anything or sufficiently without a tool like this. I've got some gloves, vinyl gloves, rubber gloves. I've got some grime wipes. You need to clean up all your forks afterwards. Some clean wipes. I've got a pair of gloves. And I think that is really all the tools that you need. Other things you're going to need, obviously, is going to be your fork seals. I've been recommended that SKF make the best fork seals. So I've got 2 sets. Each set contains a oil seal and a dust seal. And there's a set for each fork. I'm only going to do 1 fork this time. And then you're going to need the fork oil. So this is 10W fork oil. You need at least a litre, about 1.5 litres will usually cover most motorcycles. And I think that should kind of be it. If you have all of this gear, you should be able to change the seals on your motorcycle.